We're here with Mike Vanderwerf to talk about comics.
I'd say the first comic I ever saw brought me into it. Just the aspect, concept of superheroes fighting supervillains was really appealing to me. I worked at Xanadu 5 years as a manager for two, the U District store, and then back in Michigan, I was manager at a place by the great name of Tardy's Collectors Corner. But it's probably a Marvel comic, probably Spider-Man. First underground comic I ever had was probably a Crom or a Freak Brothers. The first proper, like, awesome alternative comic. I'll separate that alternative comic, 90s underground comic, 60s, 70s, 80s was Hate with Peter Bag and then 8 Ball. But it's all comics. That's the term I use for everything. Single issue, staple bound, it's all comics. My favorite comic, I've taken the effort to dig in. It was a lot of effort. It took me 30 seconds. So give it up for that. I said a Spider-Man comic, right? It's from 1979, Amazing Spider-Man Annual, number 13. Spider-Man battles Dr. Octopus. Here's another one. Frank, Jim Woodring Comics. No words. Beautiful colors. Beautiful format. The first one of his I ever saw was called Frank in the River. And this is a big collection of his comics in a hardcover format. And he's just one of my favorites. He does stuff like, his stuff looks like this.
Fun. I can definitely see what brought you into that.
Yeah. I didn't grow up wanting to draw comics. It was kind of ridiculous as it seems, kind of thrust upon me because I thought I could do it. I had put myself in a situation where I needed to make money very quickly. I was living outside and I needed to just get income on the daily and started drawing pictures and selling them on the sidewalk, and it worked. And that went on for 3 or 4 months up and down the West Coast. And that's really what got me going. And once I had enough pieces to realize I could make like a staple bound book out of it, whatever you wanted to call it, a comic or a zine or an art zine. And I was like, Seattle Expandographics, they're my favorite publisher. I'm going to go to Lake City Way in Seattle and knock on their door, give them a comic. And that's what I did. I remember knocking on the door and being like, hey, I just wanted to give you my comic and let you know I really love the publishers, and is there anything, you guys hiring or anything? And the guy was like, well, what can you do? Whatever you guys need. You need someone to file shit or ink or whatever you need. Like, okay, I'll let you know.
Which was the first comic that you drew?
Uh, Try This at Home, number 1. If you want to call that a comic, single panels with a text page that's hand drawn. It tells a story about the panel. That was in 1999 when I was living outside, and I made 3 issues of that between June and June the next year, I think. 3 issues over a year, maybe even less. And I would go around and I'd sell them, and I was really happy with them, how they all turned out. So after the first one, I was compelled to make 2 and 3 and just keep the lifestyle that I was living going because I was capable of it. I found after the first one. It wasn't sustainable, but I was capable of it. And it was all because of that first issue of Try This at Home. When Narcan Save the Day is my favorite. And because it was for a cause beyond myself, which I don't have a problem with making art for myself. Like, great. Uh, but to imagine it actually having a effect beyond myself, I get a lot out of. And then there's the actual aspect of the book, which I'm so happy with. I look at each page of it, and it's what I wanted to do. It's how I wanted it to look. And the words say what I wanted. From the start, not so much lately. It certainly did during the Try This at Home days. Visuals of wanting to create a bold image. I think a lot of the visuals I see from acid are maybe a lot of people really bold and pronounced. And I wanted to use a black and white format to have a bold image. And that's kind of what LSD brought to the table. We had a comic called Busted on the Beach that was after Try This at Home. And I was probably taking LSD then. And so I'd say at least 4 or 5 comics have been influenced by LSD. One, because it's hard. It's simple as it sounds. It's a lot of work. And once, like, my most prolific was when I didn't have a whole lot of other shit going on, you know? Just like a lot of people. And when there's more time in the day, you can obviously crank out more stuff. And then also, I think after the Narcan comic, which even at this point is a long time ago, there was a real exhale where it was like, oh man, that was a lot of work. And I didn't jump back into anything right away. I often it's been said to me, Colleen has said to me, I mentioned to you earlier, it's like I need to often have an impetus to create something. And it's just to create something for the sake of doing it and putting it out there to the universe. God love it. And I've done it in the past. But at this point in the game, it's like, if I'm going to put the effort into something, this needs to amount to something. Yeah, as trite as it sounds, make sure you keep doing it. Force yourself to create something, even when you're not in the mood. Don't let too much time pass between when you create something. Don't let too much time pass between when you create something. Don't let it be 3 months, because all of a sudden you realize it was 4 months. Like, oh, get around to that. Oh, 6 months from now, then you're like, oh fuck, what was that idea again? Or yeah, the time for that has passed, and I have to think of something more. I can't even draw that anymore. Most likely the last one. That's what I do. Persistence, whatever way that you can feel creative, just make it happen. Just make it happen. That's what I can say to cartoonists. It's not a comic until you put it on the paper. It's just a blank idea in your head. Put it on the paper, you got a comic book. They're one of the oldest art forms in the world. There's cave paintings with figures shooting buffaloes or yaks or whatever they're shooting in the cave in France. And images in comics are a basic form of communication. You can have a static image and tell a lot with it. You said earlier that I was drawing single panel stuff that can convey something, and that's what I like to try to do. So it's basic. Comics are basic, and you don't need words. Doesn't matter what language you speak. messages can be sent with it.
I think that's awesome.
That was enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. If you can get a copy of this, please do. Good stuff. The old days, the old days. We used to draw comics in the old days, and they were cheap.